It's probably the unpopular opinion, but I think the New Orleans Saints should give Spencer Rattler at least one more shot if Derek Carr can't go at quarterback for the remainder of the season. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're still taking a look at the aftermath of the New Orleans Saints win here in New Jersey up against the New York Giants. We'll dive into the tight ends who have been putting in a lot of notable work over the course of the past few weeks. We'll also dive into what worked, what didn't work, leading off with the run game for the New Orleans Saints over on the offensive side as we break that game down a little bit more in depth. We'll take a look at how Jake Haener could and maybe should get an opportunity no matter what by the end of this season. However, if Derek Carr is not able to go, I think Spencer Rattler should get one more chance. I'll explain to you why. We appreciate you very much as always for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Prize Picks. You can get started with a $50 instant bonus by playing your first $5 lineup at prizepicks.com. Just Locked On NFL with the promo code in all lowercase Locked On NFL. Listen, you know me. I am not a person that comes on this show trying to stir up controversy. I'm not a person that comes on to this show and tries to give controversial takes, everything like that. It's not my style. It's not my jam. It's not my thing. So I'm not trying to be controversial here. I'm not trying to be edgy when I say this, but I do think that the New Orleans Saints could and maybe even should give rookie quarterback Spencer Rattler one more shot at quarterback if Derek Carr is unable to go. We're still waiting on results when it comes to imaging with Derek Carr in terms of what his injury is, but here's what we know so far. It's a left hand injury. The fear is that it's a broken left hand or a fracture in the left hand, which would be a season-ending situation that requires surgery, recovery, rehab, all these other things. And so if that ends up being the case, and also he's being evaluated for a concussion, so he may also be in concussion protocol. So if the New Orleans Saints end up in a situation here when it comes to Derek Carr that he's not able to go for the rest of the season, they're going to have to, again, for the second time this year, make the decision between their two young quarterbacks, Jake Haener, the second-year passer, or Spencer Rattler, the rookie passer, to see who is going to be the starter the rest of the way through, or however many number of games that Derek Carr may end up missing by the time that this season is all said and done with this injury, all those other things. And I think that the Saints should give Spencer Rattler another chance. Let me explain why that's the case. And then I'm actually going to make a case for Jake Haener too, because I think both of these guys deserve it. I don't think that there's any wrong decision here for New Orleans, but I think that they shouldn't completely close the book on Spencer Rattler after those first three starts earlier this season. There's really three reasons why. The first of which is, I don't know how you can say that you got a full and complete evaluation of Spencer Rattler over the course of those three games where he had no offensive line in front of him. He had backups for backups on the interior and several other injuries. The issue is, though, that no matter what, you're still going to have the several other injuries. It's not like he comes back to the lineup here in week 15 going up against the Washington Commanders with Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, and Taysom Hill all on the offense with him. He doesn't have any of those players. But he at least has the full starting five offensive line, which was like okay in yesterday's game up against the New York Giants when it came to the run game, but they were pretty solid and stout when it came to the protection, giving Derek Carr time, all those other things. So I think that giving Spencer Rattler that opportunity with the full starting five offensive line in front of him could end up moving the needle in terms of getting an actual evaluation of him so that he's not passing under pressure as much, so that he's not running for his life as much, and so you can see what he can actually do with the comfortable pocket mechanics, or rather comfortable mechanics of a pocket passing quarterback who can use his legs as opposed to being forced to use his legs just about any time that he took a snap. The second reason why I think that giving Spencer Rattler another chance makes sense here is Darren Rizzi. Darren Rizzi came in and kind of said, everybody gets a clean slate. Everybody gets a clean slate. And so does that give Spencer Rattler an opportunity to have a clean slate despite the perception of those first 3 games that he did get to start earlier this season. I don't think that the 3 losses can all be handed directly to Spencer Rattler. There was a lot going on during those games, and there was a lot that didn't work during those games. Does he share fault? Yeah, of course. He's on the field. Everybody shares fault when you're on the field. It's like I said, I'm not here to say anything controversial. I'm not here to say anything ridiculous here. I'm just looking at it realistically. And so if that's the case, that he has that clean slate with Darren Rizzi, then maybe that means that the Saints could give him that opportunity. What we know, or at least what I know from team sources, is that the Saints benching of Spencer Rattler at halftime against the Los Angeles Chargers to go to Jake Haener was a Dennis Allen decision. And that should be of no surprise. Dennis Allen was the head coach, right? But it's not like Klint Kubiak, Andrew Janocko, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, were kind of advocating, going, we really should get Jake Haener in there and everything like that. So the guys that are still on this team still very much believe that Spencer Rattler can be something better than what he got the opportunity to show over the course of those first 3 games and where he got those starts. So that's reason number 2. Reason number 3, and my final reason why I think that Spencer Rattler should get this opportunity, is because what do you got to lose? No, I'm just kidding. The real reason why is because I think that he learned some valuable lessons over the course of those 3 starts. One of the things that he told me that he would like to do is use his legs a little bit more than he used over the course of those 3 games. He said he felt like he used his legs well up against Tampa, but then kind of used them less and less and less throughout, including that Los Angeles Chargers game where I don't believe he had over 10 rushing yards, if any rushing yards at all, in that game. But over the course of the first 2 games, you saw him maybe use his legs a little bit more and things like that. He wants to be able to do that more, but in a situation where it's not him running for his life, but instead read through the progressions. There's nothing available. I have a rush lane. Take that rush lane. Kind of like what you saw Drew Lock do up against the Saints defense again with the New York Giants on Sunday. And so being able to utilize his legs a little bit more, trust himself to do that, get through his progressions, and have the blocking potential to be able to do that, so that it's not, there's quick pressure off the left side, so I have to scramble right. There's quick pressure off the right side, so I have to scramble left. It's not him resorting to having to use his legs because of pressure, but choosing to use his legs because it's going to be the best play that is available. And with the Saints not having Taysom Hill in the lineup, having some mobility under center could be something that they look at as a benefit as well. So those are the 3 reasons why I think that giving Spencer Rattler another look makes sense for the New Orleans Saints. The one thing that I didn't dig into, but kind of alluded to, is Klint Kubiak. Klint Kubiak came in as the offensive coordinator. The New Orleans Saints selected Spencer Rattler in the 5th round in the same year. That is not a coincidence, right? Klint Kubiak likes what Spencer Rattler can do. Klint Kubiak believes that Spencer Rattler can run his system. Those are things that we can pretty accurately deduce just simply based upon the order in which the operation took place, right? And so I think that a guy like Klint Kubiak, who right now doesn't have Taysom Hill, who the offense has been built mightily around, that might not have Derek Carr, will want to go to something or someone that will run his offense the way that he believes his offense can and should be run. He's the guy that was around when the selection of Spencer Rattler was made. He's the guy that was a part of the selection of Spencer Rattler. I think that factors into. And this is something that we've talked about since the offseason, that a real reason why I always looked at Spencer Rattler as the quarterback that goes in if Derek Carr is hurt is because of the fact that Klint Kubiak drafted him, right? He was Klint Kubiak's quarterback. And so I pair those 2 together. Maybe you can make the argument that I shouldn't, but I do. And so that's one of the other reasons why I look at Spencer Rattler getting another opportunity as something that makes sense. Now, saying that Spencer Rattler deserves another opportunity is not the same as saying that Jake Haener does not deserve any opportunity at all, because you can go to Spencer Rattler in week 15, but that doesn't mean that Jake Haener doesn't get a shot as well. Let's break that down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by Hillsdale College, doing what they can to democratize education by providing you with over 40 free classes online. Yeah, free, helping you be able to maybe recapture some of those things that you didn't get the opportunity to learn in school, maybe learned and forgot, but you were very interested in, all that, whether it's the works of Shakespeare to the exploration of logic and science and biology. You can find it all over at Hillsdale College at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Over at Hillsdale, they're going to give you 40 free, that's right, free courses, including some of the ones that I mentioned, as well as some others like, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. Everybody says that men always think about the Roman Empire. Here's your chance to be able to come with actual facts around it. They're going to give you access to readings, quizzes, and discussions, as well as the lectures that you can enjoy at self-paced rate, so you don't have to try to like match anything or whatever. There's no thresholds, benchmarks to hit. Kind of do it as you're comfortable. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to get started. There is no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by our good friends over at Prize Picks Daily Fantasy. Really, the way I think it should be. It's not you versus a bunch of mystery lineups. It's you versus the house. So it's you and your knowledge of your favorite sports, favorite players, favorite teams up against projections that Prize Picks sets. Then all you have to do is pick more or less than those Prize Picks projections. You get 2 to 6 of those right, and then all of a sudden you're winning real cash. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. They're also giving away $30+ million rewards during Pickmas, where they're offering 2 free picks in December. And then now they also even have Venmo, where you can get your cash out even quicker. All of that as well. So you can take like Travis Kelce, more than 70 receiving yards. Lamar Jackson, more or less than 250 passing yards. Boom. That's all that it takes to get started. Just download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app with promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, family, I know some people are going to be very upset with me saying that the Saints should give Spencer Rattler another opportunity. But listen, it doesn't mean that Jake Haener doesn't also get an opportunity. For all I care, they could start these 2 quarterbacks if Derek Carr's out for the rest of the season. Give one of them 2 games, give the other one 2 games, give Spencer Rattler 1 more game, give Jake Haener the last 3 games. Who cares? You're not a team that's going to be alive really in any postseason conversation with 1 more loss. You're bound to probably take one of those losses, either against Washington or against Green Bay. So see what you've got in your young players. There's no wrong decision here. The New Orleans Saints should be able to get a full evaluation of the young players that they have. The Saints right now have a less than 1% chance, according to New York Times, to get to the playoffs. Even if they were to get there, it's going to take a ton of work to get them there. And you're going to need a lot of help from a lot of different teams. It's mostly unrealistic that ends up happening. So with that being the case, this is your chance here over the course of the last 4 games. Goodness gracious. Over the course of the last 4 games, he says, to get a look at the young talent that you have on this roster and look at them in a bunch of different ways. Like, see them as many ways that you can. Give Spencer Rattler 1 more game, and then give Jake Haener the rest of the season. Put Spencer Rattler on a little bit of a prove-it treatment, right? Give him 1 more game. If he looks good, which is, by the way, not equal to winning the game, but if he looks good, then he earns the next game. And then if he looks good, he earns the next game. But then if he doesn't look good, then all of a sudden Jake Haener gets to come in, and then you revisit Spencer Rattler after he gets an offseason. He's really looking forward to the offseason, not because he wants the season to be over, but because he's going to get the opportunity to actually put in some work to really transform. He wants to transform everything in terms of looking like a new quarterback when he comes back, Spencer Rattler does. And so I think that you can allot him that opportunity still over the course of the offseason, but you can give him an opportunity to go out there and do this again if you want to. But that doesn't mean that Jake Haener doesn't also deserve a shot or doesn't deserve a shot at all. He absolutely can. He absolutely does if you get the opportunity to give him that. So here's what you can do, and here's why I say that Jake Haener does deserve an opportunity. Do I think that he's a better quarterback than Spencer Rattler? No, I think these guys are kind of in the same place right now, still in their development, which is promising for Spencer Rattler as he's a year behind, but these guys are kind of in the same situation. But what Jake Haener gives you is somebody that operates a little bit more like Derek Carr, more mobile, a little bit more athletic, all those other things, which just comes with being a younger quarterback than, a 10+ year veteran, or a 10-year veteran. But he does give you something that is more akin to what Derek Carr gives you. Does he have the downfield capabilities of a Derek Carr? Well, he's certainly shown them every now and then, in every game that he's appeared in and all that. So maybe there's a chance to be able to build off of that. But for the most part, he's going to give you somebody that's going to be able to make quick decisions, make good decisions, and be able to get the ball out fast. Now, he didn't have the greatest showing when he went in the stead of Derek Carr, in relief of Derek Carr against the Giants. Had that play action bootleg where he took a very ill-advised sack, but that's just youth, man. You just got to get the ball out, throw the ball away, whatever it might be. He'll figure that out. That's gonna get figured out. He's got to just get that experience and everything like that. And so that's probably one of the values to getting him out on the field at some point this season. Giving Spencer Rattler another chance or another shot is not the same as not giving Jake Haener any shots at all. And I got a great question from somebody. I wrote a piece over at LouisianaSports.net effectively explaining my opinion on why I could see Spencer Rattler getting another opportunity, what I explained to you at the beginning of today's show. But one of the questions that I got was, well, if you're not going to give Jake Haener the opportunity, then what is he on the roster for? Great question. Jake Haener's on the roster because he's an outstanding backup for Derek Carr. That's one of the reasons why. But when I talk about a backup, I mean a game day backup. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the guy that you turn to if a quarterback gets injured. I think sometimes we conflate the idea of QB2 backup quarterback for who's next in line. Those two guys are not always the same. Those two pursuits are not always the same. You saw over in Cleveland, right? Over in Cleveland, they had technically Dorian Thompson-Robinson was the backup to Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson gets injured. Dorian Thompson-Robinson goes in. And then Jameis Winston goes in. But we all know that starting the next week, Jameis Winston would have been the guy out on the field, not Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And so we've seen this around the NFL. This is not new. It's where you have a guy that is the guy that ends up being the really good backup for that same quarterback for the game plan that has been installed that week. But that's not always the same guy that gets the start the week after that. And that's the way that I think the Saints are telling you openly, or have told you openly, at least already, the Dennis Allen-led Saints, that they looked at Jake Haener as more of a backup than they looked at Spencer Rattler, who they look at as a potential starter. I think that the Saints showed you that, the Dennis Allen-led Saints, back when they chose Spencer Rattler over Jake Haener to be the starting quarterback behind Derek Carr, even though Jake Haener was technically the backup game day quarterback QB2 behind Derek Carr all the way up until the point where they made the decision to roll with Rattler. And so I think that some of this is me just operating off of what the team has kind of already told you, but does the team look at things differently now that Dennis Allen is gone? Dennis Allen made the decision or helped to make the decision around going to Spencer Rattler instead of Jake Haener, but he's also the guy that made the decision to bench Spencer Rattler for Jake Haener. So which one of those two opinions still prevails post Dennis Allen? That could work in Jake Haener's favor. So these are the things that I think that we should be looking at when it comes to the conversation around Jake Haener. Excellent decision maker, fast processor, has mobility. I talked about Klint Kubiak really probably liking the mobility that you can get from Spencer Rattler, but it's not like you get no mobility from Jake Haener. He can move as well. You would still have the full starting offensive line in front of him. He's going to probably be a little bit more of a guy that might be able to maximize the receiving options, short and intermediate, while Spencer Rattler becomes somebody that maybe elevates or is able to take advantage of those receiving options in the intermediate and deep areas of the field. They're two different styles of quarterback. And that's one of the other reasons why I do think that there's value in, even if you turn to Spencer Rattler right away, still giving Jake Haener some opportunity this season, is to see, just in case Klint Kubiak's back next season, right, depending upon which head coach is hired and all these other things, what style of quarterback works best for them. Because what we also don't know is, did we just see the last of Derek Carr in a New Orleans Saints uniform? Does this injury end up having the impact for him that the injury, or not really injury, but the end of his time in Las Vegas had, to where he wasn't on the field for those final two games because Las Vegas decided that they were going to go to their younger quarterback and all this other stuff, and some help that gave them. Does this, minus the last four games, end up having some kind of an impact on Derek Carr's future with the New Orleans Saints? We don't know. Now, look, if the New Orleans Saints want to get under the salary cap next season, they're going to have to do something with Derek Carr's contract. They're not going to be able to just cut him and move on or anything like that. They're going to have to work with him, get him to work with them while he owes them nothing. There'd be no reason for him to give them that unless he simply wants out. But You're either going to have to do that or you're going to have to restructure the contract and he's back next season. But the hand injury and all this stuff could potentially have a bit of a lasting impact in terms of their ability to evaluate what's going on. And we've also seen NFL teams more and more likely since 2022, the top 10, I think it's since 2022, let's say since 2020, but it might actually be since 2022, the highest dead cap numbers absorbed by football teams in the history of the NFL on cutting quarterbacks have all happened since 2020/2022. That's great when you have the salary cap space to do that, especially when you have a rookie or quarterback that you can turn to that's on a rookie contract with both Jake Haener, who has 2 years left on his deal, and Spencer Rattler, who has 3 years left on his deal after this year, are, right? Both of them are on those rookie contracts. The issue is that the Saints are $60 million over the salary cap, so they don't get the same kind of ability to be able to make that decision. So look, no matter what, I think Jake Haener deserves a look by the end of the season, even if that look doesn't come immediately up against the Washington Commanders. So that's what I'm looking at. All right, I want to dive in a little bit more into what worked, what didn't work for the New Orleans Saints on Sunday in their win. What worked on offense, their tight ends. What didn't work on offense, though, their run game, and there might be cause for concern around that. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, where you can go to make the most of the rest of this NFL season. FanDuel not looking too highly on the New Orleans Saints going into next week's game against the Washington Commanders, which makes sense with the future of Derek Carr in question for the rest of the season. The Saints are opening as 7.5-point underdogs up against the Washington Commanders. I think everybody expects them to be underdogs, but 7.5 points, yikes. But that's what happens when you potentially lose your starting quarterback. So you can go right now. I think the New Orleans Saints are going to surprise and keep it close, maybe even surprise and win on a big upset, or maybe you like Washington to cover. You can get on all of that over at FanDuel.com, where you can go right now as a new customer and get $150 in bonus bets by placing your first $5 bet and winning that first $5 bet. You can download the app. Get on live betting, live stats, play-by-play, all in the same place as well. $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet as a new customer. It's FanDuel.com. Make every moment more and never waste a hunch with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints tight ends came up big for the team when it comes to the offense. We're going to dive into what worked, what didn't work for the New Orleans Saints on both sides of the football. I want to start with what worked over on the offensive side, which was that tight end group. You had tight end Juwan Johnson with 50 receiving yards. You had tight end Moreau with 40 receiving yards. Juwan Johnson also with a touchdown, by the way. They each had the 2 longest completions of the day. Juwan with a 30-yard reception, Moreau with a 32-yard one-handed over-the-shoulder reception that looked really good, which actually set up that Juwan Johnson touchdown. And we finally saw the first career catch of Colorado State rookie, undrafted free agent tight end Dallin Holker, 1 catch for 10 yards in this game. So the 3 tight ends in this game combining for 105 receiving yards. That comes off of a week last week where they combined for 79 receiving yards. Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson, Moreau. The week before that, 130 receiving yards between those same 3. So right now, you look at where the New Orleans Saints tight ends are, and over the course of the last 3 games, they've averaged just over 105.7 receiving yards. They're just over 105. It's 105.7 receiving yards per game. So that tight end room has been contributing big time. Now, we've also seen that tight end room get beat in pass protection a couple of times, right? Last week, Jared Verse in that last play up against the Los Angeles Rams on that 4th and 2. That was a one-on-one with the tight end. We saw Brian Burns slip in between 2 tight ends, Moreau as well as Dallin Holker, to get that sack up against New Orleans as well. But outside of that, we saw a very good set of blocking in the run game and in the passing game, receiving, those guys being able to help out there as well. So good stuff from this New Orleans Saints tight end group, who is probably the most selfless group in the on the team when it comes to or prides themselves on being selfless. Let me say it that way. On the team, they don't want the recognition. Juwan Johnson said they just want to go out there and do the work, and that's the brand of what this New Orleans Saints tight end room is, led by legendary tight end coach Clancy Barone. who has been awesome. And that has been a huge, huge story for this New Orleans Saints team, because while they don't have Rashid Shaheed, while they don't have Chris Olave, they're getting the receiving production that they need from those guys, which has been super helpful. Now, of course, they got a 51-yard day from Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They got an 18-yard day from Cedric Wilson Jr. They got 35 yards from Alvin Kamara. Could have gotten some more out of Kevin Austin as well, but only caught one of his 5 targets. So, you're going to see more come from that wide receiver room. But as long as the tight end room continues to give some contributions, especially with young quarterbacks potentially on the way for New Orleans, then that's going to be big for them, for the Saints, to have those contributions from that tight end room, especially if they're getting over 100 receiving yards a game from that group. And this new trio gives you the opportunity as well to see more from Dallin Holker, again, another young player that gets the chance to be able to kind of, show a little bit of what he's got when it comes to these last few games, which is where you're really evaluating the youth on this roster. Okay, so if that worked, what didn't work for the New Orleans Saints? Well, that's easy. What didn't work for the New Orleans Saints was the run game. The run game was abysmal for New Orleans, which was really disappointing because they got Kendre Miller back. Now, Kendre Miller had an 8-yard rushing touchdown. I leave the running back side of this conversation, if I'm being honest. A big reason why the run game didn't work in this game is because the Saints offensive line got bullied big time in the run game. So I'm looking forward to seeing them back up against the Washington Commanders, because the Commanders are not the strongest run game team, but I think the New Orleans Saints outside of that just want to prove, right? Like, this was their first game that they got their first starting 5, their original starting 5 offensive linemen out on the field since week 3. That was huge for them. They were going up against a 29th ranked rushing defense when that Giants team still had Dexter Lawrence. They didn't have Dexter Lawrence coming into this game, and the Saints still averaged just 2.8 yards on the ground, including some of those 4-minute drill runs that, of course, end up having that impact for you late, but still did not produce the way that we expected them to produce, did not produce the way that they wanted to produce throughout this game. Now they go from the 29th ranked rushing defense to taking on the 27th ranked rushing defense, which is probably the biggest weakness for the Washington Commanders. So they'll need to take advantage of that, especially next week, because you could get away with putting Drew Lock on the field, because Drew Lock made some of the worst passing attempts that I've seen a quarterback make live throughout that game, or miss on some of the worst passes that I've seen a quarterback make live. But Jaden Daniels is not going to do that. And Jaden Daniels is going to find ways to keep you on the field because of what he can do with his legs. So you want to control the run game. You want to keep the offense on the field. And if you're using a young quarterback in this game, whether it's Haener or Rattler, doing so with a fit run game behind him is pivotal, right? Integral in terms of being able to generate any success in that conversation. Over on the defensive side, what worked? Well, the defensive line actually worked out very well. I think we can look at the fact that the New York Giants the New York Giants achieved a 4.9 yard per rush average as a failure for the New Orleans Saints defensive line. But if you just look at the running backs, way better production than that. Only 53 rushing yards allowed on 18 carries. And quick math tells us that that's just 2.9 was the average they're allowed to those running backs. So outside of the scrambles from Drew Lock, and look, there's still a dark cloud that hangs over that, right? Because Jaden Daniels is on the way. Jordan Love is after that. Like, dark cloud hangs when it comes to all that. But, so I'm not trying to completely diminish the importance of rushing yards by the opposing quarterback in this game, but just looking at the run defense for what it is up against running backs, they were outstanding in this game. And Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary are a very good pair of rushers, and the Saints were able to do a really good job there. They allowed only 2.8 yards per carry to Tyrone Tracy, who was kind of the big threat in this game when it came to the run game. But then on the other side of that was also the pass rush, right? And that's where Chase Young came to life in this game. In fact, there were 3 New Orleans Saints defensive linemen that had a better than 17% quarterback pressure rate in this game. That was Chase Young, who had a 27.8%. That was the league lead amongst all defensive players that took at least 18 defensive reps. He took twice as many of that or pass rush reps. He took twice as many of that. They also had Colin Saunders, who had an 18.5%. And then you also saw Carl Granderson with just over a 17% quarterback pressure rate. So that worked really well too. So the Saints defensive line kind of coming to life in this game, which is really good. What didn't work on the New Orleans Saints defense, I don't have a ton to really poke fun at here outside of, or not poke fun, but poke holes at here outside of the quarterback rushing situation, which we've already kind of discussed. So the thing that I actually want to highlight is where the New Orleans Saints came up short on special teams, and that came from the field goals, right? So we saw the missed field goal, a blocked field goal on that, and all those other things. I think that we've seen a little bit more of that from Blake Grupe here over the course of the past couple of weeks. Missed one a couple weeks ago up against the Rams on a short 34-yard attempt, if I remember correctly. Missed had the 60-yard attempt blocked and all those other things. So just something to watch here when it comes to the New Orleans Saints and their field goal opportunities, because you certainly want to see the New Orleans Saints be able to pick up some of those opportunities there. So you had a miss from I think it was 50 something yards out, if I remember correctly, and then you had that was in the first quarter, and then you had the block at the end of the first half. I don't really want to give too much or put too much credence on the miss at the end of the first half, because that one was blocked and it was a 60-yard attempt, so you have to keep it low and all those other things. But hey, there are going to be times where you're going to need those kicks at later points in future years and all those other things. So just want to see a little bit more, getting back to a little bit more consistency from Blake Grupe there, because he was really consistent for a long stretch of this season, and now you're starting to see a little bit of the rocky hit in there, the inconsistency hit in there. So you'd love to see that get corrected. So those are the things that I think worked, that I think didn't work, all that. Insiders are going to get a film study on the blocked field goal, as well as more from this week's game. And then, of course, we'll start to look ahead tomorrow as we look at what goes on and what actually happens with Derek Carr. So this will kind of serve as the emergency episode. This is the second episode on Monday, because we already kind of know what to expect with Derek Carr here. But any big news that we have, we'll have you covered as well when it comes to that. Appreciate you, as always, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. Go and check out Locked On NFL for your second listen today. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.